Hey there, guys. So I want to thank you for taking the time to check out today's live stream. Or, of course, today we're going to be going over the recovery loop. But before I do get started, I do want to share something with you guys. As you guys know, I do have, let me pull this down. As you guys know, I do have a website that you can check out, which is bponlinefitness.com. There's a ton of information on here related to online fitness coaching. And I do want to share on here that when you do look on it on basically the website on a desktop, this is basically how it's going to look. And you can still access pretty much the same links on the website here that you can on mobile. But I do want to mention now, I do have a new button here, which is client testimonies. And I'm working on adding more here. But on here, I've added basically my first client testimony, which is from Wayne, and it tells a little bit about his story. This is all that was written by him, and so I've shared it here in the client testimony section. I usually don't share these unless the clients, of course, approve them. So as long as the clients are, of course, wanting to disclose their testimony, then it is put on there. So Wayne's is the first one that I have on there, and I do plan on putting more testimonies in there if there are other clients willing to, mention their experience in the program. Another thing too is that when you go on here too, there is program info, and this right here basically breaks down sort of how I structure online fitness coaching. And then I do have other, of course, links that you can click, which is also my fitness blog here, or you can check out blog posts that I've put on there. And of course, to actually sign up for online fitness coaching, you can click at this button at the top and it'll take you to a top form where you can fill out. You just answer the questions that are here on the top form, and that's how you can sort of get started with, signing up for online fitness coaching itself. So again, guys, bponlinefitness.com is how you access that. So that's how you'll be able to check out all that I have to offer. I have my latest live stream here on the homepage, a little bit about the services that I offer, booking your consultation, subscribing to the email newsletter. My Instagram sort of feed is uploaded here as well. And everything is here for you to view and to check out. So, again, guys, I keep this updated as often as I can and keep everything together. Usually, if there's a promotion, I'll have it up here at the top as well. But you'll see all the same information on mobile as well. So, I just wanted to share that before we do get started. So let's go ahead and get going, guys, with talking about today's live stream, where we're going to be, of course, going over the recovery loop. So, in this particular stream, we're going to be discussing a lot about, of course, the recovery side of things. And when we think of recovery, like I've mentioned previously in live streams, is that recovery is one of the pillars that you have to think about when it comes to progressing in a workout routine and really being able to build sustainable progress in your workouts. So that's what we're going to be discussing here today. So this is going to be a beneficial live stream for pretty much everybody. And I think this is a stream that is going to really help with understanding how important recovery is, how it's important to properly sort of integrate, recovery in your routine and to help it aid in hypertrophy and muscle gain. Now, again, keep in mind that when we're talking about this topic, we're going to be primarily focusing on muscle gain as the goal in particular. So this is going to be, sort of coinciding with that particular goal itself. So these are all the topics that we're sort of going to be discussing here today. So we've got the recovery loop 101, why growth happens between sessions. We've got sleep as the number one multiplier for hypertrophy, steps and low intensity movement, active recovery that actually works, and stress load equals hidden volume. And I'm going to be going over more topics as well. So The reason why I'm looking off screen is I'm trying to make sure that I'm kind of out of frame and that it's not blocking anything. Because I've sort of had the issue where my whole, body's taking up the screen, but I want to make sure you guys can still see what's on screen there. So let's go ahead and get started with the first topic, which is the recovery loop and why growth happens between sessions. So, again, like I've mentioned previously, when we think about workouts and fitness, generally what we think about is our workouts and the nutrition. A lot of times, nutrition can be neglected in a lot of ways too, but the workouts have to basically, like I've mentioned previously, you have to balance three pillars when it comes to really being able to reach your fitness goals in a sustainable way. So this comes down to your fitness, your nutrition, and your recovery. When you have these balanced, this is going to help you get there. Now, if you emphasize too much of one particular pillar, this is where we get lopsided and our results are not going to follow as efficiently. So what we need to think about is this recovery loop and how we're integrating hypertrophy in our workout routine. So, train, recover, adapt, and repeat. So, training is the signal and not the result from the workouts. Our recovery is where that adaptation happens. Like I've mentioned many times, when it comes to post workout, a lot of times when we think of, what we do post workout, usually, of course, it's nutrition, but recovery itself does play a key role, such as our sleep and also our stress levels and things of that nature. Nutrition turns stimulus into structure. So, again, you're seeing the same concept that I've been mentioning about these three different pillars. It's your training, your weightlifting, your fitness side of things, also your recovery, and then your nutrition. They all have to complement each other for you to really make the most of your sessions and really be able to progress in a efficient manner, in other words. So I want to continue on and explain sort of these different points like we just discussed, and we're going to go over each of these points and really sort of discuss how this recovery loop works. So, stimulus, of course, is our workout themselves. So, our workout is where we really start, the muscle gain process. This is where everything is sort of starting to begin. So, resistance training, of course, creates muscle damage and fatigue. Mechanical tension tells the body we need to adapt. So mechanical tension is what we're doing with our workouts. When we're placing stress on our body, this is what, is basically, when we get soreness or any kind of fatigue, this is telling our body that we need to adapt as we're progressing in our workouts. So this is not really full growth yet, but it is the message that's being sent to the body for, of course, needing to adapt in workouts. Now, the repair process is our recovery phase. And normally, of course, this does include your nutrition. Nutrition and recovery can be somewhat connected, but they are separate in a way because you still have to balance parts of recovery and you have to balance nutrition, separate from each other at the same time. So, in the recovery phase, what happens is we have protein synthesis. This is what repairs damaged muscle fibers. And if you hear me many times when I talk about nutrition and I talk about, consuming a good meal post workout, that's what that means is that your muscle protein synthesis process is really sort of in overdrive when it's post workout. After your workouts, your body's trying to repair itself with those, from those damaged fibers that have, you've really, sort of engaged in that workout. Glycogen refills fuel future sessions. So, in glycogen, again, that's an energy source in your body. It is going to refill. And of course, it's important to have adequate carbs, which is going to help with that glycogen as well. connective tissue and nervous system to recover. So all of these different things are sort of happening in this recovery phase. So adaptation, growth that happens here. So muscles rebuild slightly stronger and more resilient. So as we go, continue to consistently work out and we're, creating a good, sort of routine and a good habit, this is where that sort of adaptation comes into place. So this is where size, strength, and performance are going to improve. So it happens hours to days after training and not during. So like you pretty much know at this point, you don't see the results of your workouts until days, months, and of course sometimes years. And that's what's happening is that you're having this adaptation in your body where you have to continuously give it new stimulus to be able to grow and to build stronger. So you of course want to repeat. That's why it's called a loop. So you want to repeat this progressive loop, train again once recovery is sufficient. Too soon is going to lead to stalled growth, and too late is going to lead to missed momentum. So the sweet spot is going to be consistent progress. So what I do want to touch on here when we're talking about too soon and too late, like what I've mentioned when it comes to how we spread out our workout sort of splits. So normally with workout splits, usually that I assign to clients, usually they'll do a split where it may be back and biceps, chest, triceps, and so on and so forth. So you're going to notice that you're going to train back and biceps, maybe at the beginning of the week, but you're not going to cycle back to training that until you get to your next week. And so what that's doing, and that's giving that specific muscle group enough time to fully recover and rest so that it's really, able to perform at its best when you go back and train that particular muscle group. And the same happens with all the other muscle groups. Same with chest and triceps. We'll train it that day, but we're not going to cycle back until it's in the next week. So having sufficient time between those is going to help with keeping a, again, consistent growth happening. Your body's going to be able to adapt more sufficiently as you come back and loop around back to that muscle group. So I did want to touch on that. So sleep as the number one hypertrophy multiplier. So of course, this gym is where you send the signal. Sleep is where the body decides how loud that signal actually is. So we're going to be breaking down why sleep is the number one multiplier for hypertrophy and why workouts won't fix what bad sleep is breaking. So again, training is the signal. So sleep is that switch. So key points. Workouts create stress, not muscle. Muscle growth equals adaptation to stress, and adaptation happens between sessions and not during them. So keep in mind that sleep is a big part of muscle gain. And for the longest time, I really didn't understand this side of things. Sleep was one of the things that I didn't fully understand on why it's important. But like I've discussed time and time again, when your body has sufficient recovery, when it has a sufficient recovery time and you're getting, adequate sleep night after night, it is going to drastically, in a good way, help the muscle repair process, especially when you're going through deep sleep phases. I don't want to touch too heavily on all the sleep phases, but when you track your sleep, if you use Apple Watch or Fitbit, you're going to notice what stage you go through. If you spend a decent amount of time in that deep sleep phase, this is where a lot of that muscle growth and, a lot of the muscle repair is happening, you know, during sleep. So again, why it's important to, of course, have a good sleep schedule is this is going to really make a drastic difference in how you're going to see results in your routine. So, like I've mentioned, if we're maybe doing really well when it comes to, let's say our nutrition or, our workouts, but we're lacking in sleep and we're lacking in, stretching and being able to sort of alleviate that soreness, then that means we need to focus on honing in on that particular side of things and think about, okay, what do I need to do If I'm not seeing results in this area, or if I'm not seeing results, maybe I need to improve what I'm doing in this specific area. So that's how you have to approach sleep. And again, the recovery side of things when it comes to muscle gain and, muscle repair itself. So the next point we're going over here is steps and low intensity movement for active recovery. This is another point that I mention a lot of times to clients, and this is very important for a lot of people to be aware of because a lot of times when we think of our rest days, we think of a lot of times doing nothing. But with your rest days, you still need to be strategic in how you approach those rest days and not just treat them as, an unstructured sort of day. It's still important to have activity on those rest days and have movement. And that's what active recovery is. Active recovery is what you do basically having, cardio and light activity on a rest day to help keep your body moving, but not place, too much more stress on your body because of course, the workouts that we've performed and things of that nature. So active recovery, again, is intentional. It's a low stress movement that is going to increase your blood flow, reduce stiffness and soreness, supports the nervous system recovery, which if you're not aware, nervous system recovery is very important because when you help that nervous system, that's going to aid in sort of your performance on how you go back into your workouts. The nervous system itself is basically, of course, your reactions, your sort of adaptability in your workouts and performing those efficiently. So proper recovery there is just as important. So this doesn't compete with your workouts. It's basically complementing your workouts. This is again not like a structured workout day where you're having a set of workouts you're performing. This is something where you're doing just light activity. This could include stretching. This can include, maybe light exercise. You're not doing really structured exercise in active recovery. So keep that in mind that this is not something that's going to override, what you're doing with workouts. It's also important to get your steps in. So steps are going to be low impact, low fatigue, easy to regulate, and easy to recover from. So again, unlike intense cardio, steps don't spike stress hormones, they don't interfere with strength gains, and they don't drain nervous system energy. So what you want to focus on a lot of times on active recovery days and, your rest days in particular is focusing on getting your steps in, doing light cardio. Again, this is what is known mostly as sort of your lower zone cardio, so like zone 2 cardio. There's different classifications for, different sort of intensities of cardio, and usually you're going to focus on sort of that zone 1 and 2, where we're performing light movement that basically is an easy pace. It's not putting a lot of stress on our body, and we're able to hold a conversation if we're doing that pace. So like if we're jogging and we're talking to somebody, we're able to, be able to hold a conversation with them and we're not sort of, running out of breath. So that's sort of the top of, cardio you want to include when it comes to active recovery. And of course, your steps, generally 8 to 10,000 steps a day is what you want to focus on. So you want to have, that amount of steps, daily if possible, getting as close to that as possible and doing it as consistently as possible. And the more that you include this low intensity activity in your routine, the more it's going to help complement your workouts. So the next point here that I want to go over is stress load and hidden volume. So your body doesn't know where stress comes from, it just knows how much it's carrying. So hidden volume comes from your training intensity and weekly sets, poor sleep or irregular schedules, work, family, and mental stress, under eating, low carbohydrate availability, low hydration and electrolyte imbalance, and too many high effort days in a row. So I know managing stress is one of those things that can really be hard to get a grasp of and sort of understand how you can manage that. The way that you can really start to, you know, really optimize your recovery side of things is to take a step back and see what you need to improve. If you're noticing, you're having poor sleep, if you're having stress in any area, find a way that you can, of course, maybe add mindfulness in your day and find a way where you can, like, for example, like with sleep, where you can build a sort of healthy nighttime routine that is going to allow you to wind down into sleep. So, the first thing when it comes to really helping to, sort of prevent the heavy stress load and sort of any barriers that's leading to progression is to take a step back and identify them first. And don't get so hung up on, on them basically preventing your progress. What you need to focus on is just identifying them and seeking out ways that you can improve them step by step. So don't just go in and think that you have to overhaul everything to fix, these sort of setbacks. Focus on doing it step by step. What can I do to basically improve this habit to make it work better for me? And that's like with a workout routine and with your nutrition and your overall fitness routine should be able to complement your life easily. And the more it's able to complement your life easily, the more that it becomes a seamless part of your day because you want it to be easily integrated into your overall life. You don't want it to be like a separate thing. So you just need to, and like I mentioned with anything, when it comes to our habits, when it comes to, building these routines, when you're struggling at any certain point, all you need to do is just take a step back. But then when you take a step back and you start to, focus on, building that habit, building those better habits, slowly integrate, those habits in there. That's like what I mentioned with like nutrition. If you're like getting started with a routine, of course, you won't have all of everything ready for your nutrition. You may not have all the meals and all of the proper, types of foods that you need when you're starting a new routine, and that's okay. And this is the same concept here, is that you don't have to completely get rid of all the foods you have. You just need to find ways where you can slowly implement those healthier options into your overall, lifestyle. And that's how you make things sustainable because again, like I've mentioned a lot of times, this goes the same way when we talk about goals, New Year's resolutions. It's the same concept where people a lot of times think that they need to overhaul every part of their life in order to, make this work. But you don't have to do that and you don't need to do that because when you try to completely make all of these changes, it becomes this chore and it doesn't become easily integrated into your life. It should be easily integrated into your life to make it sustainable and to make it to where you can progress in an efficient manner. And that's what I mentioned time and time again, and I say it over and over again because it's one thing that I think a lot of people miss when it comes to sticking to a routine and making it work for them. It has to be able to easily fit into your lifestyle to where it is, becomes second nature, becomes a normal habit that you do day to day. So I just wanted to mention that as well. So, nutrition as recovery. So, again, food isn't just fuel, it's the signal that tells your body it's safe to rebuild. So, let me slide over here. So, key nutrient or recovery nutrients here. You have protein that supplies your building blocks for repair. You have carbohydrates that refill glycogen and lower stress hormones. You have fats that support hormones and cellular health. And then you have fluids and electrolytes that are going to restore performance and circulation. So, all of these different nutrients are going to help aid in your recovery process. Again, Like I mentioned, it's those three pillars. Our nutrition has to be dialed in the same way as our recovery and our workouts. So, nutrition is going to do really well and it's going to complement your recovery when it's properly dialed in. When you get the proper nutrients, you're going to notice a difference in how you feel. And this is something that happened with me as well. When I started to zero in on my nutrition and really sort of understand, okay, why am I not seeing results in this area? I had to step back and I had to think, okay, what can I do in my nutrition to really make it work because I'm not seeing progress in this area? That's what you have to think about. So, what nutrition supports in recovery? Again, like I've mentioned, nutrition is really big, especially with muscle repair and protein synthesis. Usually, what I mention with clients is it's really important to get a sufficient amount of protein post workout because that's when you're having, sort of really high activation of that muscle protein synthesis and muscle repair in the body is post workout because your body's trying to repair the stress that you've placed on it in the workouts. Glycogen replenishment for performance. Again, glycogen is an energy source. This is usually found in carbohydrates, and this is going to help you perform your best in your workouts. The nervous system recovery. Again, nervous system is really helping to how you sort of react to how you perform in workouts, how you're able to sort of adapt to those workouts, how you're able to move efficiently in those workouts. And that's why nutrition is really going to help aid in that nervous system recovery. And that's going to translate to improvement in how you perform workouts. Hormonal balance, again, like with when we're talking about fats, fats are especially healthy fats, olive oil, avocados, anything to that effect is going to help with, of course, like omega 3s, testosterone, and things of that nature. Reduced perceived stress load. So you're going to reduce the stress load on the body. So when you zero in on a nutrition, it's going to easily help to complement your recovery and basically improve that recovery side of things as well. So deload without losing gains. So deloading is another thing I do want to mention because this is an important concept to include in your routine. Now I've touched on deloading, I believe, before on the live stream, but I do want to touch on it here as well because it is pretty much still a part of recovery in a lot of ways. So deloading is basically a planned recovery and not quitting. So what we're talking about when it comes to, you know, the deloading is basically this is a short duration in a workout routine where you're going to be still performing workouts, but you're going to be performing them in a lower intensity than, say thinking of just progressing forward. So like with workouts, let's say we're on a phase where we're really focusing on progression. We're really focusing on trying to, sort of increase the weight we're lifting. We're focusing on progressive overload, trying to, create more, it's helping our body to adapt more to heavier weights and things of that nature. And what this deloading phase is let's say we get to this, get to a deloading phase. What we're doing is we're still performing very similar workouts, but we're just lowering the weight and we're lowering the intensity a little bit to help our bodies recover. And this is really good when it's done strategically because when you have this sort of short duration of, low intensity, exercise, this is going to help you really perform better as you cycle back to that phase of workouts. So again, a deload is a scheduled reduction in training stress, keeps the movement patterns and consistency, but lets the fatigue drop so performance can rise. So a deload isn't doing nothing. You're still doing your workouts. It's still basically a phase of workouts. It's still training. You're just lowering the stress load so your body can catch up. This is very good when you have it in a workout routine and it's going to really, of course, benefit your progression because when you come back and cycle, you know, to your workouts again after that sort of deloading phase, then it's going to help you really, have good performance when you come back to it. So, again, guys, that's pretty much all I have for you today. I really appreciate your time and I hope that you found this helpful and valuable. I do have my contact information here on screen as well as my website, which is bponlinefitness.com. Of course, I showed that at the beginning of the stream, so you can check that out there. Um, when you watch it from the beginning, and I showed a little bit about that. So if you guys do have questions about anything on the website, feel free to let me know. Ton of free information on there. Of course, information related to online fitness coaching and everything there. So definitely check that out. If you want to, of course, learn more about online fitness coaching, or if you have questions, you can contact me with the information here on screen. But thank you guys once again for taking the time to check out this live stream. I hope that you found it helpful and valuable, and I hope that it gave you a little bit of insight on sort of understanding recovery and how it plays into our workout routine. So, thank you guys once again for watching. If you're not aware, every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time, I do a TikTok live stream where I discuss fitness and nutrition topics. Normally, I gear it primarily towards beginners, but this can be for anybody that's interested in watching. So I do that every Tuesday. And then, of course, every Wednesday here on Facebook, in the Facebook group, I do a live stream, of course, discussing fitness and nutrition topics in more of a detailed manner than I do on TikTok to really, of course, explain more of the different points when it comes to, these topics, like when we're talking about recovery or we're talking about specific sides to nutrition or with our workouts themselves. So I just wanted to go over that with you guys. If you are interested in checking out those live streams, they are every week. I do those every Tuesday and Wednesday. I'm thinking about doing another day four stream, possibly through Substack, but I haven't sort of, made a decision there. But I do have a Substack as well that I've been working on building. So if you're interested in that, just let me know and I can send you, of course, the link to my Substack. But I'm working on building it at the moment and I'm trying to decide if I want to do streams there or if I want to maybe do it on another platform. But thank you guys once again for watching and I really appreciate your time. I hope you found this helpful and valuable. And of course, feel free to reach out if you have any questions. So thank you guys for watching and I hope you guys have a great day.